Mr. Wilms, for this background. Now I'd like to pass the floor or give the slot to Mr. Gilmore, who will be talking to us on LNG, the shipping fuel of the future.
Thank you. Good morning. And just a little bit of context. My company, Maran Gas Maritime, well, it's not my company, the company I work for, Maran Gas Maritime, operates LNG ships. So you can put us in the supportive column. We deliver LNG worldwide, and we'd like to see LNG be used in a lot of different contexts, including for shipping non-LNG ships as fuel. Maran Gas Maritime belongs to a bigger shipping group, and that also has oil tankers and dry bulk carriers. And so it's from that perspective that today's presentation is given, not from me as a LNG supplier or carrier transporter. I will kind of move this along a little bit here. I don't know, a little too... Okay, this is roughly what I'm going to cover today. Rather than dwell on that, we'll just get into things because that'll help to move things along. And I don't know, seems a lot of buttons there. Okay, alternative fuels for shipping. So, just some numbers to put things in context. Today, the global fleet consumes around 340 million tons of fuel per year. About 85% of that is heavy fuel oil. So it's a lot of fuel, and it's a fuel that everybody would like to see us move away from. The rest of it is distillate, and out of that, all those numbers, about 30 million tons per year are consumed in ECAs, and I think that's as it's been noted, that's kind of the target area for the initial switchover from other fuels to LNG. My boss, who likes to be a student of history, has added a couple of bullets here that historically gas was used as fuel before liquid fuel was burnt, and I had to go to the internet, he's traveling, to find out what he meant by that. I found a reference that in 900 BC, I think the Chinese were using gas as fuel, so, and I'm sure he had something in Greece in mind, but I don't know what that was. And of course, at the bottom there is from Delphi. I think for anybody that's been up there, you may know that there's some thought that actually the oracle was inspired by natural gas, breathing the natural gas. So, some of the drivers for increasing the alternative use of fuels, certainly regulatory and environmental are going to be one of the key issues, as has already been touched on. Again, there's some thoughts about availability of fossil fuels, and that particularly applies as we start to move into a more tight environmental regulatory environment. But owners are going to be reluctant on just normal shipping to switch over unless the price is right, unless they can make this business case, and the infrastructure is going to be a big part of making that case, and also guaranteeing the long-term availability at a good price. So, today, where does things stand? There are ships now already that are operating. There's about 60 of them that have been built and fueled now with LNG, and I looked yesterday afternoon, I think there's another 80 that are on order. So things are moving already, and that excludes all of the existing LNG fleet, which does currently use LNG as fuel, but of course we carry it around, so we don't have to worry about infrastructure. Our gas tank is huge. And for the number of non-LNG vessels that are looking, if you go out another 5 years, that people have projected to convert or to build, it's about another 800 vessels. So there is starting to be a movement in this direction. And a considerable one. Here you see some of the improvements that occur when you move to LNG. There's significant improvement in SOx, which is the main driver right now. There's also an improvement in NOx, which is good, a big improvement in particulates, and CO2 as well is about a 20% improvement. So it helps across all main items people are looking at. And this kind of just repeats those same bar chart in a little bit of numerical detail. So SOx can be reduced 90-95% because there's always, as you look at some of the technologies now, a lot of them have also pilot fuel still burning with something in it. Nitrogen comes down quite a bit, and we'll get into a little bit of Tier 3 and what that means in a later slide. and it lowers the carbon, as I said, by about 20 to 25%. So there are some infrastructure already in Northern Europe and the US, and the prices can be attractive, but there still is some distance to go. Here, let me get on to the next. This chart tries to show, using just some very fundamental assumptions, how the payback period, which are these small numbers, and I think it'll be useful when this is distributed. It was a copy from something else, and it's not a great copy, and it's hard to read here and maybe even in the paper. But anyway, what you will see, these numbers in these boxes are supposed to represent the payback period in years. And this was done actually maybe 6 or 7 months ago, so that actually the numbers that were initially run were at when prices were higher, much higher on fuels, fundamental fuels, and the payback period in this case, as you look at these assumptions, ends up being about 8 years. If you have what were the prices of $600 a ton for HFO and $900 for MDO, and if the LNG price was around $11. So we move down more to the left and up in this zone, so that the pricing becomes tighter. And but you can see there's still a good case. I think a point to be made is that oftentimes in the press you will see numbers for LNG delivered in certain marketplaces. In the U.S. right now, everybody uses Henry Hub as a reference, and that may be around $3 per million BTU. An exciting number if you're thinking you're going to buy it, but by the time you actually get it in a liquid form as a bunkers on board a ship, it's going to be quite a bit more than that number, because the infrastructure required to do that is significant. In Northern Europe, if you look over time, maybe the numbers were higher. Say now it's around $7 per million BTU. Maybe before it was 9, but I think the bunkers delivered were up around 15. So it gives you a sense of the gap between the bulk transport delivery price to the market, but then the increase in cost required to pay the infrastructure to make it a liquid fuel again and bring it back onto somebody's ship in a harbor someplace. In time, I think when infrastructure develops further, those prices will come down. So, that's just today, and we hope we'll see big improvements in the future. But looking at it from a ship owner's perspective, you have an oil tanker and you're looking to trade worldwide and so forth. The general rule of thumb that we have reached internally, and I think it's not unique, is that if you expect to be around 30% of the time trading in an ECA area, and then it starts to make sense to convert to using LNG for the period of time when you're in the ECA zone. If you're trading worldwide and that isn't where you're going to be, then it probably isn't the time yet to convert. There's a note there, the second bullet point, talking about 0.5% sulfur fuel. And after 2020, the whole world is going to require 0.5% sulfur fuel or less for fueling vessels, any kind of vessel. And there's some question mark about how the industry, the fuel supply industry, will be able to meet the demand for all the shipping worldwide. And that may change pricing, and that may change the incentives, and may drive more vessels, even those that don't trade in ECAs, to convert to LNG. So today, again, looking now more at the worldwide case, not somebody that's inside an ECA 100% of the time, but in the worldwide case, what are you really thinking about? And there's two roads to take. One would be to get the vessel in the so-called LNG Ready state, if you have a new construction project underway. And then the idea is to put certain things in position so that in the future, when maybe the economics is better, you can spend more money and actually retrofit for the full LNG fuel vessel. Or you can go ahead and put everything in right now. And we have a little bit of info on some of these things. Before getting to the actual case study, I'll just spend a second, and I'll try to go quickly through this, on Tier 3. This is coming. It's a big thing for the shipping industry in general. Ships with keels laid after January 2016 are going to have to meet Tier 3 requirements for NOx emissions. And I have another slide that shows the change, and it's quite dramatic. I think the while LNG helps in meeting these emissions, it doesn't get you all the way there depending on what engine you choose. And if I can go further here, you can read some of these in more detail when you have the presentation. This shows you the three lines here of Tier 1, the green, the Tier 2, the red, and then Tier 3, which is the purple one there. And you can see it's quite a leap down. And so that's the rule, and that's what's going to be required in a NECA zone, a nitrogen economic zone. And if we take a look here at the map, right now North America is the area where that's going to be required. Other ECAs right now principally are targeting sulfur, here, like you see in Northern Europe, and you can see others are contemplated, which probably at first are going to be aiming toward sulfur, not nitrogen. So it's kind of a U.S. or North American-centric issue, but since a lot of trading goes there, it is an important issue. What does that mean? There's been some further development and definition at these MEPC meetings, without reading all of the text, at the very bottom you see in the basic conclusion is that when you have diesel engines, you have sort of two different technical mechanisms for combustion. One is called the Otto cycle, and a number of 4-stroke engines, and now Wärtsilä has a 2-stroke engine that uses that. If you're operating in gas in the Otto cycle, then it is possible to meet the Tier 3 requirement. Otherwise, diesel engines, and there's a preponderance of diesel engines which, like MAN and others, they will require, even if they operate in LNG, they're going to require something like this SCR, which is selective catalytic reduction, or EGR, which is exhaust gas recycling, in order to meet these Tier 3 requirements. So that's why when you get to nitrogen, the case for LNG can be useful depending on the choice of engine you have, but it's not completely as strong as it is for sulfur, where there's definite, no question, advantages. Already, Mr. Wilms touched on the IGF code. The official name for this thing is quite long. Safety for ships using gases and other low flash point fuels. Everybody now just calls it the IGF code, which is a lot easier. The LNG world has always been working under the IGC code. There are differences when you move from bulk transport to using LNG as bunkers on non-LNG ships. And that was the reason why an IGF code had to be produced. It took quite a bit of time because there's a lot of issues and because there's a lot of different kinds of ships on how you're going to apply it. I've touched on just a couple of some of the main issues that were difficult to solve, and the distances of the tanks from the side shell in case you had collision or other grounding damage. In the LNG world, there's no way you would put any LNG tank underneath accommodations or accommodations over LNG tanks. But in the bunkering application, the volumes are smaller, and they have come up with a way of doing that within the code. I won't get into details, but they've had to adjust to meet the different kinds of layouts of different kinds of ships. There are other technical things with regarding gas detection and what happens and how much gas detection you need in the engine room and around tanks and around the vessel, etc. All those were issues that had to be sorted through. Took quite a bit of time. There's a draft now that I think is not almost complete, and there's an expectation that it will be finalized with an entry into force date of January 2017. At some point, they were trying to cover a wide range of fuels, including hydrogen and a lot of other things, and everybody, I think, realized that was trying to bite off too much, and now they've narrowed it down so they can finally get something done, as the industry is already moving. So they want to get something out. So there is a framework everybody can work with. So we've looked at it, and this LNG as fuel for a tanker that we have, a couple of tankers under construction. We went through a process to go down the route of having the LNG Ready option applied. So the steps that we had to take were to go through kind of a basis internally of the investment decision and the outline specification, how it would be modified. Some yard negotiations over the concept. We had to get class acceptance in principle, and do some other things, risk assessments and others, as part of that process. The classification societies will issue certificates for vessels that have reached certain milestones to show that they are LNG ready, and there's different definitions of what that means. I won't get into all of that, but anyway, you can get these kinds of certificates so that it's clear where that vessel stands in case there's ever going to be a future conversion. This is the general arrangement for one of the tankers. It doesn't show clearly, and I apologize for that, the layout of the LNG bunker tanks. They would be on deck, and on tankers it's fairly straightforward because already the whole weather deck area, main deck area is a gas dangerous space, so a lot of the issues on safety are already covered just from normal tanker design, and of course there's a lot of space. If you're looking at container ships or passenger ships, or like there was an anchor handling tug barge, I mean these things become more complicated. For this case, the VLCC case, the design envisions that there would be 2 tanks, 2,500 cubic meters each, which is about 2,500 tons of fuel, of LNG fuel, enough to go about 9,000 miles, which is the distances that we thought was appropriate going in and out of an ECA zone for one of these VLCCs. The main money would be spent in the future. So what was really spent, and you can see at the bottom here, costs, was about $200,000. With that, you get the engineering, you get drawings that on how you would do the conversion in the future. There is some strengthening of the deck, the main deck, in the area where the tanks would ultimately be placed, and some of the other fuel handling equipment. But the big number, if you're going to convert, is going to be around $20 million, and that's when you get into actually putting these tanks on board the vessel, all the piping that would go into the engine room, and that has to be double walled now because you have gas going inside the engine space, instrumentation and so forth. So we're at the first stage. If the economic case becomes one that makes it viable, then we would go at some point in the future to the second step. So, looking at it sort of from an industry perspective for deep sea shipping, what's needed? I think one of the main things is time. Markets are still evolving. This is very, very early days. The infrastructure is starting. There are people that are making real investments, not just on the ships themselves, but also on bunkering facilities and bunker delivery vessels. It is, as has been pointed out, been started in the ECA areas. There have been some thoughts that maybe at some point container ships will leapfrog and start to put bunker stations when it becomes more simple or commonly accepted technology in other places around the world, like Gibraltar or Singapore, to support a worldwide trade. But we're not there yet. And of course, there's still a lot of volatility in oil and LNG pricing. LNG is a sort of a byproduct of how the oil pricing runs, which makes the economic cases right now a little bit difficult to forecast. On one last item, and it was mentioned about safety and security, it is important, handling LNG, to maintain a high level of standards of safety, and there's been a good track record in the LNG industry, but it has happened as a result of a lot of care being placed in the design of the ships, the training of the crews, and the operations themselves. There has been a group formed, which is the Society for Gases and Marine Fuel. It's a spin-off from SIGTO. SIGTO is the Society of International Gas Tanker and Terminal Operators. It's a non-governmental organization that has been formed a long time back for the LNG industry. They could see that there was going to be this growing demand for LNG as a marine fuel. It was beyond what really SIGTO's mission is, and so a second society has been formed. It's just about almost 2 years old now. It's growing, and the purpose is really to share best practices, and so I think this is going to be a useful forum to add to the good work that is being done at the EU, at other government levels, at the IMO, to help develop this industry and also maintain a high level of safety for the bunkering operations and for the people that are going to be operating the ships with LNG on board as fuel. So, I think we've been over the targets that have been set by the regulators. They're challenging, and LNG helps to solve those. As has already been mentioned, it's a classic chicken and egg problem between infrastructure and the ships that will need the service, the bunkering service. It's growing. It'll take time. And today, though, if you're looking to do something with your vessel, it's going to be heavily dependent on the trading pattern. But overall, it is a viable industry, and it's already started, and I'm hopeful that it will grow quickly. Thank you.